externally. It's to change something externally and internally, usually for the better. Now we can do this. There's a great number of ways that we can do this. Sometimes we're forced to it by natural disasters, by things that happen in this world. We are forced to change. When we're forced to change, we do. We can, well, all of you have been through many things. We've all been through many things this year. So we talk about all of these hurricanes that have happened, the floods that have happened, the weather that happens, things that have gone on in people's lives, and they must change. They're things they can't help, they can't take care of, they have no control over, and so they are forced to make changes in their lives. And we all have to do that occasionally. Sometimes it's by choice, oftentimes it's by external things that happen. We can choose to make transformations. Now I remember back in I think it was the 80s, our Sunday school children wanted Transformers for Christmas. Does everyone remember Transformers? And what were they? You bought one toy, and then we pulled it around, and it became something else. Well, that's pretty much what we have to do with ourselves. We're not going to take anything away. We're not going to add anything. We're simply going to work with what we have and make it something better. So, as I said last night, like Michelangelo said in making statues, you just remove the extraneous. He said he never carved a statue. He just removed the extraneous. Now, I don't know if any of you have seen the one of Atlas coming out of the mountain, his sculpture of that. And it's this huge body pulling itself away from this marble block. And he didn't take it all the way out of the marble block, so we could see what the transformation was. And it's very interesting because when we go about transforming ourselves, where do we start? First of all, we decide what we want to be. We have to set, you don't just say, oh golly, I want to change. Which direction are you going to go? What do you have in mind? And I think in spiritual life we read things and we have certain attributes we would like to cultivate. Say, one of the great spiritual truths is Ramakrishna said, truth is the austerity of this age. So if we set out to be truthful, brutally truthful, make it a practice in our life. Now when I say brutally truthful, I don't mean we're mean. I don't mean we go around telling one, boy, did you get a bad haircut today? What happened to you? We don't do that. That we don't need to. Maharaj said, tell the truth, but never a harsh truth. And one of our devotees was making this a practice back in the earlier days when women wore hats. And one of the women had on this just awful hat. I mean, it was really ugly. And she said, how do you like my hat? And we all watched the other woman who was practicing truth, and she said, well, it's got a lovely feather. But when we start to put into practice what we are trying to achieve, we realize how often we don't. We suddenly realize that some of our teasing is not truthful. We realize that sarcasm, when we say something, you pop back with something sarcastic, that's really not truthful, and it usually has a very harsh edge to it. But in transforming ourselves to become truthful, we start looking at what we are actually doing. And we start monitoring what comes out of our mouth. So often we get into habits, particularly when we're young, and things, everyone's joking and you come up with the next thing to say that kind of tops the person in front of you because it's fun. And they're not true. They're not the exact truth. And we've built a habit of that maybe in our youth. When we start deciding we're going to cultivate truthfulness, then we start looking at what comes out and evaluating and changing some of our things. That doesn't mean you have to be a boring old person who never says anything funny. That doesn't, because Swamiji was one who had quick repartee and made a lot of fun, but he wasn't dishonest. There was a story about when he was riding a train in England, and a Scotsman sat down next to him and he says, "Tell me, Swami, what is the difference between a babu and a baboon?" And Swamiji looked at him and he says, "Oh, not very much difference, sir. Sort of the difference between a sot and a Scot." So he didn't, just made the play on words. He was not being dishonest. At that time, the Scots had a great reputation for drinking, so a sot and a Scot. As I say, you don't have to be dull and boring and never have fun. But we just watch what we do say. Now, if you decide to cultivate another virtue or attribute, and you could pick which one you wanted, which one do you read? Where would you start? One of the places that I would say is a great guideline for it are the yamas and the niyamas in Patanjali's How to Know God. I mean, perfect. It's like a list. Do this, 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 and this will happen. And we can take our start from there. I'm not going to go through them. I think you have all read the yamas and the niyamas, and I think you know pretty much what they are. So, would anyone like to just say one virtue that they would like to have above any other? I can tell you what mine was. When I first moved in, I am better at it now, but not as good yet. Impatience. Totally and absolutely impatient. I want things to go now, 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 now. This is not, it doesn't do anyone any good. It doesn't do me any good. It doesn't do anyone around me any good. So I have been trying to, and I think I've gotten better at it, being patient with myself and with other people. Because first of all, you have to know what you're doing. And most of us, when we see faults in other people, what are we really seeing? We're seeing ourselves, and we're seeing an attribute that we do not like in ourselves, in someone else. So every time you get irritated with someone or impatient with someone because they have some little habit that annoys you or is annoying and irritating, look at yourself and say, why am I reacting so much to this? And I think you'll find, for the most part, that you have exactly the same habit or attribute. And you're not looking at them, you're looking at yourself and putting it on them. Because the only person we really can work on is ourselves, to transform ourselves. And again, like Michelangelo said, we just remove the extraneous. If we do truly believe that we are the Atman, which is covered with a lot of veils, then all we do is take away the veils. We're not adding anything, and we're not adding anything to ourselves. It's like the Transformer toys. You're not adding, you're not subtracting, you are simply clearing the way and making the real thing what it really is show. And I do think that's what all of us are trying to do in our lives. Most everyone would like to be a better person than they are. We all have things that we had another devotee who said every night before she went to bed, I think it was Swami Brahmananda said you should go over your day and see what you had done, and if there were things you wanted to change and where you could have done better. Well, she called it review and regret. She said, every night before I get into bed, I do my review and regret. And she apologized a tremendous amount for things that most of us had not even noticed. You know, I mean, we go through life and we know someone really well, so we don't notice everything that they do. We make accommodations, say it's just them, or we seriously don't notice it. It didn't mean anything to us. But she was very serious about becoming a better human being and treating everyone as if they were manifestations of divinity. So she did review and regret. She doesn't do it so much anymore. She watches what she had a wicked sense of humor, really wicked, and things would pop out, and that's what mostly she was on her review and regret about. She'd say, "I didn't really mean that." She'd call you up the next day. "I didn't mean it when I said," and I didn't notice that she said it. Okay. And you may get answers like that when you're trying to do things and you decide that if you go as far as she did, feel you have to apologize. The person you're apologizing to may go, "I don't remember that." But you're only working on yourself. You're not working on them. The other thing we can do oftentimes is, in our transformation, I know one of the biggest, this is going to go straight to the externals, okay? I'm going to change the externals too. One of the problems in the United States today is bad health, obesity. All over, everywhere. Now, Swamiji, everyone says, keep your body healthy, keep your mind healthy, right? So most of us, oh, well, those potato chips won't matter. Oh, well, this won't matter. Oh, my cholesterol's up a little. We have to be conscious of what we're doing in every aspect. Now, it doesn't mean we have to go over the top and be a fanatic. It means we just look at ourselves. Maybe I should exercise a little more. Maybe I should take that walk. Maybe I should, set up a routine where I do something every single day that's not overwhelming. Because if we set up something that we know we can't do, we're not going to do it. And we'll be failing all the time, which will not help any of our transformation or transforming ourselves if we build in failure. Now, I remember there was someone who was taking up meditation and was told, well, if you sit for 10 minutes every day. And he thought about that. And when I can't sit for 10, I can't guarantee I could do 10 minutes. Said I can't do that. So he thought about what he honestly could do. He sat for 2 minutes. He could walk into his shrine and sit down for 2 minutes. But he wasn't going to fail at that. He could honestly accomplish that. Now he can sit for an hour and a half. But start with a small amount, something you can honestly do. And add to it as it gets easier. I think we've all done that in school. Aren't you doing that? Yeah, you do it. You start and you get better and better and better at what you're doing. And that does change you. So that's how we do our transformations. I remember there was a story, and I can't do the quote, but Girish Ghosh went in to see Sri Ramakrishna, and he couldn't do anything. No, I can't do this. I can't meditate. I can't promise I'll stop drinking. I can't promise anything. You're going to have to do it all for me. Now, we would all like that. That would make life a lot easier, but not really. Because when he turned over his power of attorney to Ramakrishna, he had to be conscious of every single thing he did. And most of us don't have to be that conscious. It would help if we were, but we aren't. We do so many things unconsciously. And that's a good thing, too, if they're good habits. It's very good to have routines that are helpful and automatic, because if you had to stop and think, okay, I have to get up this morning, the first thing I have to do is usually go into the bathroom, and then I have to have coffee, and am I going to have coffee or am I going to have this? I have to meditate. Now, should I get dressed before I meditate or should I go sit down? If we had to think and analyze everything we did as automatic in the morning or automatically during the day, we would immobilize ourselves. We wouldn't be able to accomplish anything. So, set up some good habits. Like get up at about the same time every morning. Don't make it don't fight your routine. It gets easier. Routine was one of the hardest things for me when I moved into the convent, because I didn't like to be tied to a certain thing. I wanted to push at it, not do it at that time. I would do it, but I didn't want to do it then. And I think that's a fairly normal thing when you're young. You don't want people telling you what to do and at what time you have to do it. I mean, none of us do. But what I have found, having a very strict routine in the convent, is if I don't think about it and just do it, get it done, I have all this extra time to do things that I want to do. I mean, things that, when I say what I want to do, there are people that you devotees that you want to contact because you haven't seen them in a long time. But if you fighting the routine and, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, you waste all of your mental energy and your time in balking it, doing the job. And we see it with everyone, almost everyone who moves into the convent, and I've seen it with students. I have so much studying to do. I have to study. I've got to do this. I have to do it. But most of their time is spent worrying about what they're doing. Now, I heard your routine today. You're not worrying about what you have to do. You just do it and get on, and you have lots of extra time. And you can add more. It's like the old saying, if you want something done, find the busiest person around and ask them to do it. Don't ask the person who is sitting leisurely, because they won't ever get it done. They'll sit there and think about it. And the other one that I have encountered is perfectionists. Perfectionists are people who immobilize themselves because it isn't quite perfect. And they slow down. Now, I mean, we all have to do the very best we can. That's all we can do. But an old Arabic saying, only God is perfect. And if there's a little mistake in something, only God is perfect. So, we have to set up these kind of habits and decide on a goal, decide why do you want to transform yourself? Do you want to transform yourself? I mean, we can get really busy, oh, I want to redecorate the house, and we'll do that. Oh, I need to I need to improve this. And we get our external lives, oh, it's perfect now, I've got the right house. Everything's just the way I want it. And how long are you satisfied?
1 week.
A week, maybe a month. And then you look around and you go, maybe I could, move that picture down a little, it would be better. I mean, our minds always want to improve. We really do. We want perfection. But we don't know how to. We don't go in the right direction. The things of the external things will not be perfect. They will be, we can make them beautiful, we can make them good, and we will still be dissatisfied after a while. We will still think there's something better. Because that's the nature of us. We want to recognize our Atman. And we want to know that. Then we'll experience perfection and oneness and the things that we are really looking for. And as long as we keep doing it in externals, we're always going to be a little dissatisfied. We can reach our external goals, but I think you'll find soon you'll add another goal because there's something still missing. I need a little better job, I need a little better car, I need a little better this. There's something more. There was an old country western song that said, "Is that all there is?" And I think many people ask themselves that. Is that all it is? Is that all there is? Is this it? Isn't there something more? And the only thing that gives us that feeling of always getting more is searching for God. Because you can never reach the end until you are illumined. You can never reach it. There's always more. Like the book Go Forward, like the story Go Forward. Never stop. Keep going forward. Go forward, go forward, go forward. And you will eventually have that realization. Because there is no failure in spiritual life. None, ever. It's the one job you can't fail at. You will always reach perfection. You cannot fail. And that, does anyone have any questions? I tend to give very short talks. I run out of things to say.
Is that all it? I'm just saying your statement. Is that all it? Is that all?
No, if you have any questions, I'm happy to talk about them, if I can. As I said last night, I'm not a marriage counselor, though.
You'd like to have some of the stuff which Girish was asking about. Is it foreign or is it
I know.
local?
We would all like that.
Mhm.
Take the power of attorney, just do that, yes. So,
But then he accuses him and says, "You tricked me
I know.
by asking for the power of attorney."
But you know, it's very odd because, I'll tell you, when Swami Chaitanananda came out with the book of Girish Ghosh, I actually only knew what I read in the Gospel. I knew absolutely nothing about Girish Ghosh except that he drank too much and he used to berate Ramakrishna, and he was the first one of the first to call him an incarnation of God. And I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. When I read that book, I realized exactly what an important man in society he was and how much he changed Bengal and women's status in India. I mean, he was a really important man, and he achieved a tremendous amount of things in the what we call the world, and he also achieved enlightenment. But that's what was interesting to me. People can be extremely successful, extremely seemingly outgoing and outwardly oriented, but they're not. Which also goes to show me that as you take up spiritual life, you become more proficient at what you're doing. And you actually achieve more status in the world, as we call it, separating the world from the spiritual, which is really silly, because there is no world and spiritual life. You don't have a worldly life, like you walk out the door of the ashram and suddenly you're a different person. No, you take that person with you, but you become more proficient and actually have, it's kind of a side effect, more success in what you're doing. Because you're concentrating your energy, you learned how to concentrate your energy through meditation, through spiritual things, which is transforming you. I mean, we do that, and it's something we don't even notice, thank God. Because if we went into it to achieve that, we wouldn't. You try to grow spiritually and everything else kind of falls in place. But you consciously try to do the spiritual things and what you know is right. Pursue the path that is helpful, is selfless in most cases. I think it was Viktor Frankl that said, you can never be happy if you are a selfish person. The only way you can grow is to expand yourself and include everyone. And it's the only time you will have success in life is when you have grown so large that you don't even think about what you're doing. You project it out. Today the ashram went to the Ronald McDonald House, and it was I loved seeing it. Because everyone walked in, they all started working. There was very little chatter, very little anything. Everyone went and started working, got everything done, and in 2 hours they had made five dishes for 50 people. And it was very inspiring to see that kind of work being done. Lots of chopping, lots of this. And all of these people who are going through real tragedy in their lives with their children, and they talked to a few of them, their kids have been there like 6 months, 4 months, undergoing tremendous medical procedures. And they try and stay relatively cheerful. they're making an effort to look at the cheerful part of it, and this is helping others. It's not. It took 2 hours out of our day. That's not much. 2 hours is very little, a very little amount of time when we all work together. So, and I've noted since last year, I saw the list of things that the Ashrama is doing with helping communities, different groups here in town. And it's really admirable. Really admirable. And I think it also shows the community that we're part of it. We are part of the community. We're not, staying in our own little group, which also helps. I know we do it, and we try to do this in Los Angeles and Santa Barbara, and I think they do it up in San Francisco. Try and join the outside community, so we're all increasing the feeling of we're all together, we're all one human kind. We work together, we take care of each other. And as I say, these transformations through natural disasters really make you do that. When you have half of the community who have lost homes, and they have nowhere to live, and they've lost everything in their home, then you suddenly go, whoa. And Santa Barbara, probably many of you have been there. It's a very wealthy community. I mean, extremely wealthy. And people are very good in our community with donating money and donating, but they don't really involve themselves. They kind of keep a distance. They get the recognition for donating money for backing this Boys and Girls Club Incorporated, okay? Things like that. When so many people lost their homes, all of a sudden money didn't do anything. Did not do a thing, because there was just nothing that you could buy, no one you could hire, nothing. And so actually the community started working together. They formed this thing called a bucket brigade, and just anyone who wasn't in the disaster put on a red t-shirt, got a bucket and a shovel, and went out and shoveled mud out of people's homes. Out of nowhere. It wasn't anything anyone said, oh, we should do this. One person started because he felt it was the right thing to do. And now, but we all start somewhere. And that's how we do it. If it's just, we start small. We start with a feeling inside ourselves, I can do that, I can help here. It's not like we have to sit down at a big table and plan the whole operation at once. We can also immobilize ourselves by too much planning. And if we just start doing. But the transformation comes. Someone decides to have a food bank. Now those started very small. And people go out and actually pick fruit off trees of neighbor. People who aren't using their fruit, they call the food bank and say, you can come take the fruit off my tree. And it's grown into a huge thing, where it really steps in and helps every community. We have another Direct Relief International, started because of, what was it? The Red Cross. It started because we have a great number of doctors in our community, and they had all of this medical equipment and supplies, medicines, that were not dated, but they had the samples, so they started compiling them. And they started a whole thing, very small, Now it's a huge warehouse that sends out crates, I mean literally ocean-going crates of medical supplies everywhere in the world, wherever there's a disaster. But everything starts small, with a little person behind it who says, this is what I can do this. This needs to be done. Not even I can do it. This needs to be done. I mean, look at, I always go back to Swamiji. I'm shocked when I found out his first speech at the Parliament of Religions. I'd read all the newspapers, how everyone stood up and they were walking over the backs of the chairs. And then I read, it was 4 minutes long. 4 minutes, like the Gettysburg Address. That's all it was. And it was at the very end of the day when everyone was tired, hot, and probably asleep in their chairs. So, things, yeah, we can do this. We can transform ourselves, and in transforming ourselves, transform society. And right now we really need to. There are a lot of people out there that don't know they're exactly the same as all their neighbors, want exactly the same things, have all the same emotions. They think somehow they're different, and they're scared to death of the differences. So they react like trapped animals because they're terrified of something. I don't know, I don't pretend to know what they're terrified of, but I think it's just plain differences. They look at the outside and they can't see, like, that person loves someone, has a family, is trying to raise their family. They don't see that. They see, oh my Lord, he's got tattoos all over. And that's what we see.
That was such a good example. I have that bias. The moment you mention this, I remember somebody who will come, who has a what are they called? Not those t-shirts. They are not called t-shirts. Anyway, whatever.
They're called wife beaters in our area.
Huh?
Sleeve?
Well, for men,
Singlets.
Anyway, it's t-shirt, but doesn't come up to here. What are they called? Anyway.
It's a good term. But it's not a good term, but yeah, wife beater.
Wife beaters is what they're called.
Anyway.
Sleeveless.
So you have huge,
term.
there's everywhere, and he comes to do your plumbing, something. And I know, thank you.
Because we do have these biases. There's what is his name? Father something or other down in Los Angeles who started this whole movement of drug addicted and ex-convicts. And he started this whole movement. He's a Catholic priest. And he came to talk with a lot of his boys. And he started a business. And you say plumbers, okay. All of them were pretty skilled in things they had learned. And they were off drugs, and he was rehabilitating them. Well, one of the boys, he came in, and he's got dreads, and he's covered in tattoos. And the first job he decided they would start was plumbing. And he said, now how many people really want tattooed ex-cons in their house when they're not there doing the plumbing? He said, that was a mistake we made. We don't do the plumbing anymore. So he started this
I remember, thank you.
bakery.
Yeah.
And they started a bakery, and they baked bread and sold it, and became very successful, and they're helping everyone. So they opened a restaurant, and they have women now. They really had to teach them how to approach the customers, because here they were covered in tattoos and pink and green hair, and everyone would come in and they'd kind of go, oh dear, oh. Now they're paying for tattoo removal to get people in better options for their lives. But the one black kid that said, I was going to New York to talk to a group to start, to promote this program. And he said, I walked through the airport and women grabbed their purses closer to them just looking at me. And he said they don't realize how much that hurts. And there are things that we do without thinking. And if we looked at ourselves and see what we do. I mean, we even have kids who come to the temple now, and at some point in their life they've covered a whole arm or a shoulder with tattoos, and you kind of go, you've got to wear that the rest of your life.
Must have been painful when they got it.
Oh, it was terribly painful, and they're multicolored. And, now they're trying to get jobs in, like, the county offices, and they have to cover them all the time because, what you do as a child, as a young person, is not always the right choice. And we don't know. Now, these are extreme choices with people who have, turned their lives around. But it's still, we all live with those people, with them every day. And how do we treat them? Do we look at the outside? Or do we look at how hard they're working now, holding 2 or 3 jobs, studying, finishing their schooling, really changing their lives around, completely transforming their lives? You had?
I did have a question. Thanks for talking. When we talk about transforming ourselves and then as a byproduct, hopefully creating some positive change in society, if that's what we want to do. Is there anything that you can recommend to spark, other than I don't know if it's possible to convince anyone or everyone to come to the Ramakrishna mission or some kind of house of spirituality, but to spark that kind of inner transformation and change and motivation to because I can't fix or change someone as badly as I want to. Huge swaths of society that are in fear and
well, I think
to spark something that would prove fruitful, hopefully.
Yes.
In others.
By improving yourself and showing them what you believe. I mean, it's so hokey, but recognize everyone when you see them. Nod to that homeless person. You're a person. I recognize you're a person. You don't have to bring them home. You don't have to, take them into a restaurant and feed them. But acknowledge them. I had the best example of that. How many of you know Swami Lokeshwar? No, Swami Sridharananda in Australia. Now, if you've met him, this man exudes love for everyone. And when I was in Lucknow, years and years ago, there was a beggar who came up. We were trying to get to the train. Came, and she was, pulling on her saris and pulling on this. She wanted money, desperately. And he turned around and talked to her for about 3 minutes. And she walked off with her head held high and stopped begging. Now, he didn't give her money. But by being the way he was, and I said, what did you say to her? And he said, I told her to respect herself, that she was worth much more than this. And I saw that in action, and I thought, okay, up until then my approach had been to walk as fast as I could. And he did not give her money. He just told her she was a person worth being. So if we can do that with people who look disenfranchised or different, that takes away the fear. I mean, I'll tell you another story about our bookstore. When you sit at the desk, at a certain time of evening, the sunlight blinds you. So I was sitting on the desk and no one had come in. And I heard someone come in and I did, "Hi, how are you?" And then he got into view. He was a Hell's Angel. He had tattoos all over. He had chains hanging down. And I'd already said, "Hi, how are you today? Can I help you?" You know, with this chirpy little voice. And he went, "Yeah, I'm looking for a cookbook for my mother."
So the blinded sun helped you.
The sun blindness helped me immensely.
Bah, sun blindness.
Yeah. And I thought, I wouldn't have done that if I had watched him, you know, actually seen him walking in. I would have been more reluctant. I wouldn't have been. And I thought, well, why? Because my first reaction would have been, I would have kind of got, oh dear, I'm here by myself. What's going to happen? But it is, I mean, and those are silly little examples. But can you imagine if someone looked at you and you saw their reaction of fear? How would you feel yourself? You would go, why are they afraid of me? What is it that I'm doing that they're afraid of? I mean, and it's happening more. And probably more for if you have darker skin.
Yes, it happens anyway.
And this. Yeah, I mean, that's true. And that's sad. The imam in our city, in Santa Barbara, now that's a crack up. He looks like he's Mexican. He's Afghani. But he looks like he's Mexican. Goes around in a long dark coat. And he walked into Starbucks and everyone kind of... And he went, yeah, I'm Muslim and I like Starbucks. So, you know. But he didn't react to the...
The thing is when you're mentioning how we should try and not be so afraid of certain groups of people and things, the only thing that like kind of makes me a little bit wary of that is like, for example, I'm currently staying in Philadelphia in the city, and as much as I like the city and as much as I like the people, the fact is that there are a lot of men who catcall. And so it's gotten to the point where if I like see a man and I know that he's looking at me, I'll tend to like look in the other direction and kind of walk away quicker. Mm-hmm. And on subways, I won't sit next to men. I'll make sure there's a woman sitting next to me and things like that. And while that, like, you know, is similar to the reaction of all the women pulling away, it's a justifiable reason for that because
yes, of course there is.
Yeah, because
that's being safe.
Yeah,
and using common sense.
Yeah, because there were times where I was catcalled up to 3 or 4 times a day,
yeah.
And this was just like me not even sitting next to men and things like that. So what would I do in this type of scenario where I don't want to react with fear, obviously, but at the same time, I do need to like protect myself.
Just what you're doing. Sit next to a woman. Using common sense. I mean, you're not going to put yourself in danger. No. And you're too young to just look at them and go,
Yeah.
As you get older, you can look at them and say, bad choice.
You must.
But you have to get older to be able to do that. When you're young, you do have to be self-protective and aware. Okay. Yes, go on.
Sometimes in a public sphere in this case is not based on what you said, just from yourself. So sometimes it is also our duty to do actionable things. For example,
Yes.
like you said, someone came and said, let me clear the mud from this house.
Yeah.
Similarly, there are injustices which you see, and it may be the right thing for you to protest on the street
Yes.
for this.
Sometimes.
So, I have always been at a loss to recognize to have the transition correctly. I cannot still do. At my workplace, what you said, ever since I understood a little of Vedanta, I try to see that by teaching the students or by advising the students, which is my main business, I will try to see that I'm serving God.
Mm-hmm.
Having done that, even within the university I work for, and then outside the university where we go to this poor neighborhood and this and that. Not for all, but occasionally I think I wish I should do something that is just not transformed well. Now I can. It needs another oomph, another kind of a quality also to go out beyond my day-to-day routine things. As moms, I know every moment you are changing the world around you just by your spirituality, I think. But
I don't know. I think we all feel like there's more we could do.
that's
But
true. So,
there's always more.
and particularly with the country going through, in my opinion, one of the worst times in a very long time, it almost looks like we have more than just be this change the world around yourself, act locally, think globally, all of that. It bothers me that I'm not doing anything more than that, which I am just transforming myself and the world around me. Do you have any prescription?
Well, you just said it right there. Act locally. You can't change the world. No matter what you say, you're not going to suddenly stop starvation in... Where are they starving right now? When I was growing up, it was Ethiopia.
In America.
Yes, they're starving in America, right. So feeding people in America, making sure that, just locally. One of our nuns always said, just work on the things that come into your orbit. That's all you can really affect. What they're doing unless you are willing to go stand in the pipeline in North Dakota, you can't change it. Now, if you are willing to take up that kind of global protest, then yes, okay. I personally am not.
Thank you.
I grew up with Vietnam, women's lib, and civil rights. I was like 16 to 22 then. So,
It was the in thing to go to the streets.
well, yeah,
It's becoming in again.
I know. It is coming in again. Because people, and you know but the thing about that is that complacency is coming to an end. That people are becoming more idealistic again. They are looking at what's happening and realizing an ideal. That was not a peaceful time in the United States.
But I'm very proud of
Well,
that time of
I
ours.
mean, but like I said, it was the first time the government pulled the National Guard on their own citizens. That was the first time they ever did that. And People's Park in Berkeley, where Swami's, I was telling a story at the table yesterday or maybe today. We happened to be driving through Berkeley, visiting Swami Swahananda the day before People's Park. And we said, Swami, you better leave. Come with us. We'll take you with us. No. And the National Guard were all arriving with the batons and the big plastic screens and everything. I mean, it was frightening. We didn't have that in the U.S. And they were stationing right out across the street from the Berkeley Center. And we said, come on, Swami, he'd only been in the United States like maybe 2 years or maybe a year. No, I must save the center. I have to stay with the center. Okay, he said, you go. And we did. We didn't stay to save him. And years later, I said, so what did happen? He says, I saved the garbage can. It was out on the street, and I pulled it in. And so, but yeah, there was all of this unrest, civil unrest going on. And it was not pleasant. People were dying. There were all kinds of things happening. Friends, when they would decide to go to the civil rights marches, took their lives in their hands and did get killed. With the Vietnam War, you didn't necessarily get killed, but you were not popular, and you might be in jail.
Yeah.
Or they might take you to jail.
For dissenting.
Yes, but we did end up in jail one day. But because we were students and it was a college town, they looked at us and they said, would you call your parents? And it was like, oh my God, we have to call our parents and tell them. So we did not get charged with anything. They just made us call our parents and tell them where we were. And then they let us go. But we were, up until that time, we were very obedient, study hard kids. We were not rebels. And I think until we realized our classmates were going to Vietnam and getting killed, it hadn't entered our orbit yet. And then when it's your own friends and kids you've gone to school with all your life, then suddenly you think, ooh, this has got to stop. And I think possibly we're getting to that point again, where people are taking the stand enough. Now the only stand I take now is I really make sure I vote. I am not going to ignore an election.
But do you really consider speaking out for different rights and for speaking out for idealism to be considered a rebellion? Because I honestly feel like that's sticking up for what you believe in, which I don't think is rebellious in any sense, right? You can still get good grades, do all of those things, and also be a part of these protests and still stick up for what.
Of course.
Right?
No, I mean, absolutely.
That's what you will say.
No, we all did.
I'm so proud.
We were in college. We didn't drop out of college. We continued with our education, got our grades, did it, got jobs, and still protested.
Not rebellion, maybe there's but you're challenging a status quo.
Yeah.
And the reason they call it protest is because it makes as you say, the status quo uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So it is rebellion from the governing side of things.
Yeah.
But our whole country was founded on rebellion.
Yeah.
It's not, when you said this is the worst time, read some of the articles about the elections in the early times of the United States government. Just read some of the newspaper articles. They are vitriolic about who's running and what they're doing that's wrong. Abraham Lincoln was one of the most hated presidents around.
Yes.
He was doing things that the country did not want.
No, but same thing with Kennedy and his election.
Yep.
The whole process of election, that is where the money became a very big factor.
Yes, his father bought Chicago, and we all knew it, even at that time. He went in and bought Daly County, which swung the election. This is not a country, we have had bad government things going on from the beginning.
Yes.
Because intrinsically, government has good and evil attached to it. There is no perfect government. Swami Swahananda and I used to argue a lot until I was yelling at him, he's a communist, and he was yelling, you're just a capitalist. And I'd go, yeah, I am. And he'd go, communism is the most ideal kind. I went, doesn't work. So did I gloat when the USSR broke apart? Yes. I did. I went and I said, see, I told you it didn't work.
They're having a comeback though.
No. I know. Everything comes and goes.
When the wall came down, did you worry about it? Or did you gloat about it?
Oh, yes, I had.
People have to talk in microphones.
I was very happy about the wall coming down. Now, Germany wasn't. Oh, we had friends in West Germany. Oh, they said when the East Germans came in, they don't know how to work. They just expect everything given to them because that's what they had lived for years. And they were just, oh, this is going to ruin our economy. Good and bad with everything. And we're not going to change that. There will always be good and bad, and they'll balance each other out. We just rather not have the bad in our faces. I mean, seriously, yeah. But as I say, the only thing we can really do to make ourselves closer to what we want to be and know who we are is to work on ourselves. And in working on ourselves, we actually do influence a lot of other people. Because if you don't react with fear, hatred, anger, it does affect the person. It does affect other people. One of our monks in Hollywood was mugged when he was coming home late one night. And the person was beating him up. And he kept saying, it's okay, brother, you can have all the money I have. I don't have money, but you can have it. Brother, I don't fault you for doing this. And the man stopped beating him and left him. But he had developed that where he really did not have animosity. So, and that was from years of being a monk. Years of being like that. So, those kind of transformations are possible. It doesn't mean bad things aren't going to happen. Because we all have our karmas, but it doesn't mean life is going to be perfect. It doesn't mean, in the external world, it does not mean that. Now, but we will show our divinity by not letting those kind of things change who we are. Becoming more proactive in our approach to life rather than reactive. Because when we react, the external has control of us. If we can stop, think, and then choose to behave in a certain way, we have control over ourselves. Impatience is one often causes reactions. And that's where I had to stop. That's one of the things that I realized. Okay, I'm reacting to situations and not acting in them. But, we can all transform ourselves to one degree or another. We have to choose what our goal is. Because I can't say even what we want to be because we already are. We just, if we make that choice in life to become what we are, then yes, it will change the world around us. I was kind of questioning that with the thing that happened in Pittsburgh. We went to the Jewish synagogue, and they're talking about increasing security. Increasing security, putting guards up, making ways to get into the buildings. And in one way, I think they have to do it. In another way, I think that all it does is increase the situation. And the only thing I can relate to is the temple in Santa Barbara is out in the woods. And we have a security system. We have a thing that goes off, and we run up to the temple to see who's trying to break in. Okay, that's our security system. We'd grab the dogs, run up in our pajamas, and see if anyone was breaking into the temple. Yeah, I mean,
that's the security. That's
our security
response
system.
To something. Yeah.
So, but in the 60s, before I moved in, shortly after it was built, someone did break into it before they got the security system and slashed a picture of Ramakrishna and stole some things from the altar. This was in the late 60s. So we were trying to think, because the temple is open all day long, for anyone to go in and sit and meditate. And they were trying to think of how could they still keep it open, but protect what needed protecting. And so no one liked it, but we put iron gates across the shrine. And anyone who wants to climb over them could. But it's a kind of visual barrier and keeps people out. But it has allowed us to keep the temple open all day long. And we have had people try and break in again, but mostly at night and from the outside. So far so good. I mean, it's but I think if we had locked up the temple and put up, all kinds of things, I think it would have made it worse. I really and truly do. I mean, we have lights, we have motion sensors now, because that mostly scares everyone off when all the bright lights go on. But I don't know. I don't know how we would react if we had something more than a theft happen. I hope we wouldn't react any more than that, but we'll see. Or hopefully not. But I do think we have to think of those things and see how much power are we going to give the external world over us. I mean, forces of nature, we have no choice. We have absolutely no choice. Although we tried in the 60s also with bomb shelters. We started looking at those things too. We lived in fear of the bomb. And do you know how we were going to stay safe? We were going to duck our heads and get under our desks.
That was the
duck
training
and cover.
That was the training which was given, and then iodine tablets.
Yes.
That was the other solution to the problem.
Well, the high school I'm working at actually has like a room that has like fallout shelter
Yes.
in like little letters right above the door and like above the gymnasium.
I know.
And it's very cute how like they still have that as a remnant from the 60s.
I mean, duck and cover. I can remember my classroom, solid windows, and we were under our desks. Even at that time, I kind of thought, that whole window's going to fall down on us. How is this going to save us? But we dutifully did it when they had the, when they had the practice things. As we dutifully walked out with the fire practice too. Duck and cover. Yeah. I forgot the iodine tablets.
What did those do?
It prevented radioactivity from getting you.
Iodine.
That's so the thyroid.
Only the thyroid.
The thyroid. The rest of the
But
stuff
that
is
only
okay.
helps for long-term, like radioactive exposure, right? It doesn't help with the short-term.
Yeah.
Well, we were
Just a
totally convinced it was going to save us.
quantity of
I mean, really.
I know.
Gave us a sense of
Yeah,
security.
it's a safety blanket.
Sure.
Psychological.
It's like,
Yeah.
Placebo.
And we talked about fear yesterday.
Yes. So,
So again, it brings back to fear. Then.
well, does it? I mean, it does. Making that kind of reactive behavior does increase our fears. It does.
Because again, we are saying we have to be open, we gotta be spreading love, and then we are putting a security system, we are closing, we are not
Yes.
open.
I know, we have to have common sense. You can't, common sense is, as one of our swamis said, the most uncommon thing in the world, but it is something we should cultivate in Vedanta. Common sense. You don't put yourself in danger. You don't invite the Hell's Angels into your house. You use common sense. But common sense says you don't need to be afraid of everyone you pass on the street. If they're a different color, if they have tattoos on, if they've got dreads, if they've got this or that. We don't have to be afraid of them just because they look different. They have to give us an indication that there is a reason to be self-protective. But the reason can't be just the way they look. Because we all come from different backgrounds. We come from different backgrounds, we come from different subcultures of the United States.
And also about the transform, we can only work on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But also when you are working on yourself, but then you do, people take advantage of you. They're going to do it. She's going to do it anyway. At workplace or at home or,
They
So-
might. I didn't say the world would be perfect or your life would be perfect.
Right.
It's just that you can be taken advantage of. We had someone who had found the marker for Alzheimer's and other people in the lab took all the credit.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Took every ounce of credit. She didn't get one bit. And she was highly hurt and feeling life was unfair. Which it was. Yeah. Competition in the lab and other people took all the credit. So, but she changed her job, went to a different workplace where the work environment was more congenial and people were not like clawing their way up. And she's quite happy there now. She came and she said, I don't know how that could happen. But it does. It does happen. That we can't change. She changed her reaction to it. Because the only person she was making miserable was herself. By constantly being angry about what had happened. So that's when I say the only one we can work on is ourself and our reactions. And yes, people take advantage of other people. And it happens. And you learn from it. You learn who those people are and you disengage. You don't have to keep going back for the same treatment. You alter your behavior so that their behavior does not affect you.
This might happen multiple times, so you may need to do it multiple times.
Yes, it can. Like we said yesterday, doing the same thing. You don't keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting them to change. We can't do that. You get to know your people. I mean, we all get to know them. And we adjust our behavior so that we're not having the same reaction. If you have someone who constantly will make fun of you or something, then you don't necessarily seek them out as your best friend. Someone who belittles you or someone who is critical of you all the time, you don't need to cultivate that friendship. It doesn't mean you have to dislike them, it's just you don't cultivate them. You get with people, like-minded people who have the same values that you do, and you become friends with them. Not everyone in the world has to like you. And you don't have to like everyone in the world or be with them. You don't have to go into every single room and have everyone think you're wonderful. And you will help yourself transform yourself by finding like-minded people. I mean, that's why you come here. Everyone has the same goal. This is what they're trying to do. And that by increasing the group here, you also change society. That's how we do it. And if anyone, you don't have to tell people what Vedanta is, you don't have to do anything. You practice it, and if they ask, then you tell them what they need to, tell them as much as they can handle at a certain time. We have some people who've been coming to our temple for 40 years. And they're still not sure what Ramakrishna's name is, but they really like the philosophy. No, that's seriously. They're not devotees. They really like the philosophy, but they could care less for the devotee section of Vedanta. They consider themselves Vedantists.
The eyes looking at me, I'm the one guy here, probably.
We all, have different aspects and different ways of coming. Don't worry, you'll get there someday. He's going to catch you anyway.
As I told you, yeah. Okay. Things will happen out themselves, right? I don't plan.
Yeah.
Spontaneous.
Right. So now that we all know how to transform ourselves, shall we go down and have dinner? Let's transform ourselves that direction.